Hi there, and thank you for clicking on this video. Going to be talking about the circuit for those that have been put off by the connection issues. I've been farming this ever since they fixed it. Got up to, I think it was 1,500 level enemies, and it ironically was with a three-person pub squad. Everybody was like LR2, LR3 though, so everybody had pretty well-rounded kits. And this is just going to be for some basic tips. At least what's been apparent. I'll give more of a breakdown because I do plan on level capping this, even though the level cap has been reached already as of 4/28, April 28th. But the modding is actually kind of interesting. Um, because a lot of those garbage arcanes make a lot of sense now. Like, here was the setup I used, and it was completely on accident. Regular Trinity. Um, I did swap over to Combat Discipline and Combat Avenger, which is probably the closest thing to a pro tip I could give you right now. Any frame that has a decent heal, you can swap out for this combo because there are cards you can get which provide you health on kill, which completely negates the penalty of Combat Discipline. So Avenger is just basically procced. Blessing I have found pretty good use for, though I wouldn't say it's required. This is just a very well-rounded, even setup. It does have a 100% ability duration and plus 75% reload speed invigoration on it right now. But to be honest, except for the quality of life on the duration, not required. This is not a strength build. It's not an energy vampire build or anything. But one of the things, just so far of what I've observed, for those of you that haven't done this yet, there are a couple things that can be really good quality of life benefits if you were attempting to farm this, specifically with a group. Okay, you can roll the weapons and the frames if you are trying to do a longer run, right? You you would need some setup. So you would go in, pick something, and you would run like one with your group. If everybody needed to roll, you would run one round and then come back out and everybody would leave. And then you would go back in and see what your rolls are. And if you got what you wanted, one of the things you would do, it doesn't say it anywhere, and a lot of people have figured this out, but let me just show you. One of the things that helps, frankly, an insane amount. I'm on solo. Gonna go in, I'm gonna say begin the circuit. It's gonna load in. Running. I'm gonna see what my rolls are. So we have an Oberon, an Inaros, a Gara, and a Volt, right? So all of these are good frames. Even the Inaros can be used because he has the Blood Altar helmet on right now. And the issue is that it basically comes down to what can deal with super tanky enemies the fastest. So any sort of armor strip, shield strip, definitely carries a priority on it for quick clears. For, say, like the defense node, one of the frames that ironically is actually really good for this is actually Valkyr. She can just sit on top of the defense node, apparently, and completely prevent it from getting one shot. Obviously, like heavy AoE weapons, Eximus, that sort of shit, will play a part in your undoing. But the fact is that if you can keep the enemies off or keep them distracted, obviously the defense target survives. Wisp is pretty good for keeping melee units off. Obviously issues with the Eximus. So for these three, I would either pick Volt or do Oberon with the random attachments. So we have the Tsar, the Sporothrix, the Secure Electa, the Dual Zoran, Kama, Vasto, Twin Viper Wraith, and the Lex. Alright, I'm just gonna pick a random secondary because those all suck. Kama, Dual Zoran. Let's see, I might have a config on this. I do not. I bet I turned those into the, was it the Twin Basilog? Yeah, the Lecta has a build on it. The Sporothrix has a build. The Kuvazar obviously has a build. So I would look at what it is. And I would equip. So I have all four up here. And what I would do is I would screenshot. And I would make sure to check what my percentage is. Bane. It doesn't show the Kuva element right now. I'm sure they're going to fix that. I bet this is a Toxin Tsar. And what I would do is I would just go straight back to the Dormizome. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up all of those weapons in my arsenal. And I'm going to mod them accordingly. And we're going to talk about that. But you'll mod them. You can mod them literally right here. And then immediately go back in. And the pistol was the Twin Viper. Alright, so when we mod for this, one of the things I would highly recommend is faction mods go away. Make sure you have your Arcane Zarn, but faction mods disappear. Reload mods disappear also. And you try to pack as much multiplicative damage on as possible. Because there's stuff in the mission where you would just make it like a priority. You would pick one of your weapons to buff the hell out of with your picks. So you would either go with like a melee build, a pistol build, a primary build, and then there's stuff for like the frame also. So for like this, I would obviously pick the Tsar. And I would get rid of faction, get rid of reload, and throw something else on here that adds damage to it. So you could do something like this, and then do even like more base damage. Oh, it's a Heat Tsar. That's why I never use this. But you would mod accordingly, right? So the fact is what you want this weapon to do is bring all of the mods that you basically don't get bonuses for. So if you were going with like an AoE build for the Tsar, you would keep Firestorm off, don't use Aptitude. Then you would do Toxin. Just bring all of your other multipliers, because the stuff that you get in the mission is like crit chance, you get reload. There's this thing where every time you shoot something with an instance of damage, it gains vulnerability. So like fire rate would be a big deal. But in terms of like faction damage, leave it off for now. It's either, unironically, it is either bring all of the faction mods or don't bother with them at all and just throw other multipliers on. Obviously, throw different multipliers on. But the fact is it's like ESO, where you're swapping factions that you're fighting against. I wouldn't even bother with it. So there's no way to min-max this for like a specific faction and have it be useful. Like there's Corrupted, there's Grineer, Corpus. Like it's just all kinds of a clusterfuck. So you want to bring the rest of the mods, which you're not going to get from decrees. So bring a lot of raw damage, bring fire rate, stuff like that, right? So for the Tsar, I would probably mod something like this. And for fire rate, there's a decree for that. For extra crit chance, there's a decree for that. For dots, there's a decree for double damage on dots, like a faction mod. So you don't need faction mods. That causes your statuses to deal 2x, right? So it gives you this other stuff and causes this weapon to have like 14 mod equivalents on it. So no faction mods, base damage, your main multipliers. So like for this, I would throw some coping setup. I don't have a secondary arcane. That is up to you if you want to do that. I threw one in here for something. Anyway, let's do diffusion, galvanized shot. We would do crit damage. And then you could do like corrosive, and I would figure something out. This might just be like the coping build, if you will. Where I just use it as like a bullet hose. If there is something that's like pretty tough, and then I would swap from the Twin Vipers to the Tsar to bop something. As far as like melee goes, what I've been doing, and it's worked pretty good so far, is again remove like faction mods. You want your main multipliers on here, so like reach, blood rush, crit damage especially. It is definitely worthwhile to replace the faction mod when doing the circuit to run double crit damage, because one of the cards you can get is it doubles your crit damage. So obviously that's an insane fucking deal. So obviously, because it's going to be doubled, if you're running a melee build, you want as much on it as possible. So you want to bring your main multipliers, right? If you would also want to try to do, you could even do like a no element build, because you get those on cards also. And when you hit something with like a pistol, you can add vulnerability. And because there's the card that makes your dots do double damage, they stack. So you can destroy something pretty damn quick, right? So the fact is it's very much about keeping enemies away from you. If you can front load the damage, because you're damn sure going to have weapons do an insane amount of damage, it is actually possible into the thousands to just one-shot everything. Literally just blow them up so they're not an issue. Now, stuff is coming from so many different directions that they're probably going to hit you a bit. So some form of survivability, protective dash, rolling guard, that sort of thing. Shield gating, obviously. But even up to the level that I got to, the Trinity build, where it's just using pure damage reduction, I wasn't having any problems. And it was more of a face tank build. It did have rolling guard on it, but I wasn't shield gating. I was able to nuke the enemy that was trying to kill me before they could do damage to me. So, and your weapons are going to get completely jacked up damage-wise. They're going to be insane. So, doing your first level cap, this might just be the way to do it. But just my experience so far, it's going to be kind of a shit show based on getting a combination that you want. So I would literally say, as long as you have a frame that works for you and a single weapon that you enjoy, man, you're good as gold. Really, like, I would just say that. And just when you get the decrees, pick the one for the weapon that you're using. So if it's like a vulnerability on hit, for like pistols, if you have a bullet hose, obviously that's pretty insane. Extra crit damage on melee builds where it's like it stacks cumulatively. It's like old Blood Rush. So stuff like that, depending on what you're doing. And the only one, to be honest, the one weapon class that seems to have gotten the most out of control is I saw a guy using this, and that guy was having too much fun. Right? It's got the primary plated rounds, makes perfect sense now. Because it's got this monster magazine, right? You can get fire rate from one of the cards also. And there's also another decree where if you roll, like literally shift roll, it'll just reload your magazine. So this monster 3.7 reload down here, right? This monster 3.7 reload is now a dodge roll. And that's kind of insane. So like for these massive magazine weapons are definitely eating well right now. Especially if they got the fire rate to back that up. And there's like a wisp on the team. It ain't that big of an issue. Like you would throw more fire rate on here too. Like this is just a crit chance, fire rate, reload speed Riven. It's nothing fancy. Gets me to the 150 crit chance, so it's like an even chance of orange and yellows, right? Just make sure you got your ammo mutation in order. Because one of the ways that you are going to scale heavily is going to be fire rate. So, anyway, this is just some basic tips, right? Because people were asking for like a basic guide. The biggest thing that isn't apparent, and I still see some people doing it, I guess they just want to like pick up and go, or maybe they've optimized their builds already. But it's only been 2 days. Is you can go in, see what your combo is. Like this is what we had before. Right? Go back out into the Dorma Zone. Pull those weapons up and mod them accordingly. And bring your core modifiers. Don't worry about faction damage. Obviously, it would do way better against that faction, but because you're cycling through so many, yeah, and then there's like Thrax and stuff like that, and they don't have factions. So those are going to be the guys that are going to be the issue. I wasn't having an issue with any of the enemies, though. When reviving somebody, there was twice, where like a level 1000 Thrax jumping on you, it one shots you. Surprise! You can't damage reduce that with a Trinity. You got a rolling guard out of that, but it is what it is. So the biggest tip I can give you is go in, see what your weapons are, go back out into the Dorma Zone, or be in like your ship, so it just drops you straight in. You don't have to run through that little tunnel, and you can just mod accordingly, and it won't change what those things are, provided it doesn't roll, right? So as long as you don't go in the portal, they should stay the same, but if you leave it long enough, they will rotate. So anyway, long story short, no faction mods, main multipliers, whatever your main damage type is. You could even go like 90 mods, or even like 60/60s. I know that's not really helpful because like surprise, right? I would say 60/60s because there are mods where if you proc a status on something, it spreads that status to all the enemies in 10 meters, so you would want more status, right? So probably 60/60s. But with the Trumna, it's all about that alt fire, so I do the bigger mods anyway. But it's the beginning. Obviously, a meta is going to form on how to deal with this, but I can guarantee you, if you're doing a long run with a group, you're going to be rolling whatever warframes and weapons you get. And you would just go in, run one round, and then back out to try to get a roll. And all you basically need is a warframe that you can use and a weapon that you can use. And then you would just build around that. So there's no point in like forming something up for this because it just disappears the next round. Anyway, take it easy, guys.